Okay, back at it again in the living room studio, solo episode 2 out of the 4th episode series. Or let me say that again. Number 2 out of 4 episodes for this solo series. If you haven't been here before, let me quickly welcome you. My name's Chris, and this whole podcast is dedicated towards the power of social connection. So the way this podcast came about, if you're curious, is I was traveling for a corporate job for about 2 years. Every week I'd be flying to a different place. And it was really cool. I got to wear a suit and fly first class a lot of times. But what I noticed was year after year, I was away from my family, away from my friends, and away from community. And I needed it. And then I started to read about the loneliness epidemic and the friendship recession and how more people are spending more time alone and less time with friends. And there's rising rates of depression and anxiety. And I thought to myself, this can't just be me. So whenever I started creating content about it, turns out it's not just me, and it's a lot of other people. So in this scenario, it's not just me. It's also, we got Logan in the house.
Hey. Sorry, I got distracted.
As you know, we got Sonny in the house. It's so funny. We just hit record. He's been chilling. As soon as we hit record, he goes crazy. So
He absolutely went crazy.
yeah, he's commandeering all your stuff, it looks like.
Yeah. My notes. Hi, Sonny.
Your notes, you had your whole little thing planned out, and now he is just ruining the game. But Logan, it's been a week since I saw you last. How has your week been?
It's been good. I've, again, just been working, been doing a lot of writing. I do like to just kind of come up with stories and build worlds. And so that's been a lot of fun. Been doing a lot of that recently. I also too have been working on a podcast.
Plug it. Let's talk about it.
I try to do like movie reviews, kind of like story reviews, kind of stuff like that. More just kind of story based stuff. And so I'm trying to get that off the ground. I just have one episode. It's about a movie called Knives Out. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. But yeah, I'm really excited for that. Try and get that up on the ground. You have very inspired me to do my own podcast and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I've been doing.
You're doing it. I always tell people, I think of the people who've done a podcast, 95% of them thought about it for a really long time before they pulled their trigger. But of the people who want to do a podcast, 90% of them never do it.
Yeah.
Because it takes so much to actually go out there and put your stuff out to the world. Mm-hmm. So it's so funny. Sonny's pawing you.
I was like, is that? He just put his paw on my arm.
Whenever he paws you, that just means he wants some love. So all of the pets in the world. But this episode is going to be questions. And these are questions that you all have sent in, or questions coming from the production booth over there. I have loved having guests. I love doing solo concepts. But I also love being able to answer questions, because I only know so much about what you all want to hear. And whenever I can put the ball in your court and understand what you want to hear, that's going to make it so much better, because it's actually ringing true to what you want to hear. So Logan has the questions.
I do. I have the questions. I also have a couple rapid fire questions, kind of get you loose and kind of thinking a little bit.
Let's go for it.
They're not all deep, but they are like just kind of fun stuff.
I haven't heard these rapid fire questions.
No, I came them up when you were out. Yeah. So I'm excited. So the first one is going to be kind of a basic one. What's your favorite color?
Blue.
Blue. Why?
I like blue because I think I look good in it.
Oh, okay.
I like the sky a lot.
Yeah.
And whenever you look at a really pretty blue in the sky, that is one of my favorite things. Also, when you go to the ocean and you see how far the ocean stretches, if you see a sunrise or a sunset over the ocean, the blueness of the ocean is so cool. What about you? Favorite color? Blue
actually is mine, because I think it just brings calmness and gentleness and steadfastness, and I love that about blue. I also think I look good in it too.
Hey, if y'all are watching, comment below your favorite color, and then also, is blue the most common favorite color?
I think blue and or red.
Blue and or red. Okay.
Because I think both of them, I think they're high on the color chart. Everyone knows blue and red.
Two primary colors.
Two primary colors, exactly. My second one is, if you could have a superpower, what superpower would you have?
mind reading.
Ooh, really? Okay. Mind reading.
I would. And a lot of people will say, oh, I don't want to know what's going on in people's minds. And
Yeah.
I'm nervous about what they think, which I am, of course. I don't think it's natural. But then again, it's a superpower, so it's supernatural. I love communicating, though, because I can't read your mind, but together we can create meaning and we can build things and build friendships and build relationships and make memories. So it's all based off human psychology. So if I can understand the human mind better, that'd be super cool.
That's actually pretty. I haven't heard that way when it comes to mind reading, but that's an interesting perspective on it. I like that though.
What about you? What are you doing?
I would definitely. My go-to one is probably shapeshifting, and like shapeshifting into like any object and or person or animal, just like anything in general, anything that consists of like atoms. So just kind of changing my atoms to format into anything, which would be kind of cool because like I can be a plane and then fly somewhere and then turn into myself again, and then like, oh, look at that, I'm here, something really fun. I love Sonny's so funny.
I got to take a picture of this right now because Sonny's just chilling on the couch. We should have got him a microphone.
We should have.
He was in a good microphone spot.
He was like, wasn't he on the podcast a while ago?
On the podcast,
yeah. Not the best host, but a good podcaster. My third one is: would you rather get stuck in a spaceship in the middle of space or on a boat in the middle of the ocean?
I'm going boat because I am more retrievable that way.
Yeah, true.
I think the Navy could send out some big rescue ship to come get me.
Yeah.
But space, if you get lost in space, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah, you're gone for good. I mean, it's like beautiful, I imagine, like deep space. But yeah, you're just gone. But
are you picking space? Or are you picking ocean?
I would probably pick, because you brought that up. Being rescued is actually a lot more easier in the ocean, so I would probably go with the ocean. But I think space would just be more beauty in it. Ocean is beautiful, but space is like you're seeing the unknown, and no one knows what you're seeing.
Right,
be very nice. My fourth question is, and this is related to the podcast: if you could have any celebrity on the podcast, who are you picking? What celebrity you thinking inviting over? Guys sitting down having a chat on Talk to People podcast.
That's such a good question. My initial reaction, and this may be because I studied him a lot in grad school, is Barack Obama.
Oh, okay.
Because he's been a president. He's been in some of the most interesting conversations probably with world leaders from everywhere. With business leaders, with nonprofit leaders, with entertainers, with athletes. But he also is pretty eloquent. He wrote a lot of his own speeches. He had a ton of speech writers, for sure. But a lot of the ones he wrote, especially when he was on the campaign trail. So he would be one. If it were someone who were not alive, I think it would be really cool to have on. Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
Because he was really good. Same thing. His whole thing was being able to build relationships and gather people and also articulate it in a way that people could hook onto.
Yeah.
And he did it masterfully. So that would be another cool one. What about your podcast with movie review? Who would you like to have on?
Oh man, that's a good one. I want to say, what's his, Christopher Nolan, who did The Black Knight, who did all the Batmans he did all the Batman movies. He just did Oppenheimer, which was really good. I think him as a creative director is very good, and I think he would have a lot of insight for an up-and-coming like directors, filmmakers like that. Very elegant guy too.
He's got the Midas touch.
Yes,
anything he touches turns to gold.
And yeah, like you said, everything he touches, and I love that about him and his uniqueness, and also his practicality. He likes to have very practical effects, and you can see it on screen. I think that's my last one. That was my last one.
Rapid fire.
Rapid fire.
Done.
Yeah.
Well
Five
done.
in the chamber.
So what do they want to hear? What's a question that people are sending in, and we'll just riff on it.
Yeah.
So we'll see what it is, and we'll go from there.
The biggest one is social media bad for you?
Oh.
So that is like that's the big question right there.
Yeah.
Is social media bad for you?
And it's funny because I gathered these questions on social media.
I guess you think about that. That's true. But yeah, like I don't know. Social media bad for you?
What's your initial reaction when you hear that question?
My initial reaction is yes, because I think there's a lot of toxic people on there, or that hide who they truly are.
Yeah.
On social media, and they only put the best of themselves on there, which is like fine, but it's also like that's not the whole story, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And also there's a lot of cyberbullying. I mean, that came about from technology and from just social media in general.
Yeah.
And that changed a lot of people's lives. So it's just like my initial reaction is no.
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side, kind of like you said, you got all these questions from social media. This podcast is on a lot of social media sites, so it's like it is reaching a lot of people. It's just kind of a double-ended sword where, you know, if you get stuck in it and you get drowned in it, it's not so good. But it's also like using it as a tool, as a resource to promote yourself, to reach other people, to talk to other people. It can really help. What about you?
It's cool to hear you think and talk, and I think about how long it took me to get comfortable on the mic, but I already feel like you're decently comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's because you've probably been doing different things outside of this, but that's cool. But social media is a wild thing. And whenever I hear, is social media bad for you? I also think of like, is social media good for you? And I'll start with some research. Actually, that's boring. How about I start with my gut reaction, and then I'll add research in. So my gut reaction is yes, social media is bad for you. Mm-hmm. I have lived this. I've walked the walk. In undergraduate for about 4 or 5 years, I didn't really have any social media. I was off the grid for the most part, and I did just fine. At my undergrad, I got to meet a ton of people. I got to go to a lot of different events, go to community events, but I took this class called The Dark Side of Communication. Ooh. And seeing how digital interactions, they promise to replicate what a face-to-face interaction can provide, but they can't. And people will use it as a substitute when it's not meant to be a substitute. So I think whenever I think of this question, I rephrase it to, rather than is social media bad, I think about it being, is social media a bad replacement for face-to-face interaction? And it's like, yes, it is.
Yeah. But
can it be used as a complementary component for your social connection and your human-based like interactions? And it totally can. So research about social media, okay? Mm-hmm. For all the nerds, right? Here we go, Borefest. But also really interesting research. It shows that social media, if used properly, it can actually help you. It can help you connect with those around you. They call it active use. So if you log on to social media with the intent to exchange ideas, to connect with others, to encourage people, that's helpful. So hopping onto Facebook and me seeing your post and me commenting, super cool, great job. I'd love to hear your thoughts behind this. And then you hopping back on, we're actually going back and forth. And that active use, if we use social media like that, it makes us feel more connected. It will help us get closer to face-to-face meetings. Like, hey, let's go get coffee. Hey, let's go do this. Let's get on Zoom. Mm-hmm. It connects us to another opportunity. But then there's passive use. And that's where we get screwed over. Because passive use is consumption. And it's not where we go on to exchange ideas. It's where we go on and we scroll. And I am guilty of this. If we're in the court of law, the judge is going to hit the gavel and say guilty. because I find myself on TikTok, on Facebook, Instagram, scrolling, but all I'm doing is consuming. And our brains already have so much content in them nowadays. So we are adding more in, and we're not giving ourselves time for self-reflection, any of that. But in addition to that, on Facebook, it's like a PR firm. You will publish things that are good.
Yeah.
Me, I publish things that are good. Oh, I got this podcast episode out. Oh, I got this studio that I'm working on. But I'm never like, oh, I was feeling depressed this week because I don't know what to do with life. Or, man, the podcast that I've been working on, the stats are really bad this week. Like, I'm not posting that on Facebook.
Yeah.
And maybe I could, but I genuinely don't think about it. And I think a lot of people don't. So we see a whole bunch of good things that people are having. And there's research showing that the longer your session is of Facebook, then the worse you feel after. And some people may ask the question, does social media cause loneliness? And Jeff Hall, the researcher at KU, he and I met, and he told me something where he said, lonely people, this is how he said it, does social media make people lonely? He's like, how about lonely people use social media?
Huh, okay.
Because whenever you're lonely, you may go to social media to address the feelings, the uncomfort, the anxiety that you get. And what you realize is by scrolling, you get a dopamine hit, and it gives you something to watch, and it removes you from that. But then once you go back to life, you didn't address your need. And then now you feel a bit more despair because you're like, dang, I feel worse now. And it becomes a cycle because you mentioned one thing. You said FOMO. Yeah. And we get a ton of FOMO. We get a ton of self-comparison, a ton of envy. And those negative emotions come on us. And then we feel worse. So then we can go back to social media. So that vicious cycle is really like, we have to avoid that.
Yeah. There's always the deep end of everything. And sometimes you think you can swim in it. You're like, oh, I'll be fine. I'll just stay at the surface of that. But then you get one little like inch in, you're like, oh wow, this is deeper than and then you start to sink. You're like, whoa, now I'm in this like weird rabbit hole. And also it's like it's a time consuming thing too. Like you go on TikTok and you're like, I want to watch a few episodes, and then you look, now it's like 3 a.m. and you got to get up at 6. You're like, whoa, what did
what's going on?
What's going on? Yeah, definitely. And with the whole loneliness, it definitely doesn't help a whole lot, But you were talking about how it's also a good way to connect and to meet people. Is very, like you said, useful tool in that sense. Also, like to stay contact with people as well, because like my sister, she's off in London right now, and the only way we can talk is through Instagram. So it's like it does have that benefits of keeping in touch, contacting people, all that stuff. But it also has like the other ends of everything.
Right. I think about that too. Annie was talking about this with me, and she said it gives way to long distance relationships and long distance friendships. And long distance friendship is not something a lot of people talk about, but we all have friends that are long distance. Like they moved away or we moved away. And social media is really good at that. The weird thing about social media nowadays, though, is oftentimes it's not even pushing our friends' stuff to us. Like, Twitter's one of the only things or X now, where they have a following and a For You feed. So you can go back and forth. I mean, TikTok technically does too, but oftentimes it pushes you towards the For You page. Yeah. So you're on social media, but you're not actually seeing any stuff that from people you know. Every now and then something may come in, but ultimately it's media. And this is something Jeff Hall says a lot. If you ask him about social media, he's like, what do you mean? Like, are you talking about tweeting characters back to one another? Or are you talking about a platform that has a whole bunch of videos on it? TikTok, way different than Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely. I think TikTok is more media based and Instagram is more, I want to say it's more on the tool side, media and tool. but I think they're both media. I just feel like Instagram users are a bit different than TikTok users, just in the sense of like, because TikTok, I feel like you keep pushing out content over and over and over again until one video blows up. Versus Instagram, you can make a post and like, you get like 5 likes on it, and then you're like, all right, well, I made a post. That's kind of the whole point of, I think, Instagram personally.
Different energies and different moods to each platform, but the way I'll end, there's so much more to talk about social media.
Going forever.
But the way I'll end it is just saying social media can be good for you if you use it actively. If you go on social media to message, to connect with others, to update people about your life, to encourage people, social media is bad if you use it passively. If you go on just to scroll and consume, it's going to catch up to you. You're never going to have enough time. There's always going to be another video. And then once you get finished, you want to go back to it because you have FOMO. You feel like you're going to miss something when really 99.9% of the stuff on there is never urgent.
Yeah. It's just there. Yeah. The next question is, how do you make a conversation memorable?
Oh, how do you make a conversation memorable? That's a good question.
That's a really good question.
So to give reference here, the person who asked this was involved in sales. And what they do is every single day they're talking to people who are constantly getting pitched other things by other people. But he has competitors, so he has to compete against them and to make sure what he says sticks. And the greatest advice that I could give is sort of what I said last episode. It's not what you say, it's how you say it for the most part. And it's your presence.
Yeah.
If you can focus, if you can make sure they know that you're listening, that's going to set you apart. And then the second thing I would say is to be yourself.
Yeah.
When people ask me about what are the best questions to ask in an interview, if you're hiring someone for a job, that's one thing. But for podcasts, follow your curiosity. What are you personally curious about? Because your personality is your thumbprint. It's unique to you. And whatever you follow, if it's truly your curiosity, it's going to be unique and it's going to be new. Me, I like to go against the social script a little bit. And that has created a lot of cool moments that we talk about. Like at church, popcorn at the movies.
Yeah. Yep.
One time we were doing the popcorn at the movies where we show a movie at church, and then there's like a sermon around it, and there were Kit Kats, and I was greeting that day. So most people would this may not be the best advice, but most people would eat after the service or before the service. But I was like, I'm going to eat my Kit Kat while I'm greeting.
Yeah.
So I'm standing out front of the church, and I got the official swag on for greeters, and I'm just eating a Kit Kat. And this woman came up, and she said, "Oh, what's your name?" And I was talking to her. I was like, "Welcome to church." And from then on out, she always calls me Kit Kat Chris.
Oh.
And I think of Kit Kat Chris because it's silly, but it's memorable.
Yeah.
And adding something like that, because I like being yourself and recognizing we have a social script that tells us what to say. And oftentimes that's good. Like when you call 911, they'll say, "Are you safe?" That's a good script to have. Like we need to have that.
Yeah.
But sometimes it makes sense to break the script and to do things a bit differently because it'll make you more memorable.
Yeah, true. I also think of the context of the conversation. For instance, if you're trying to have small talk, most small talk conversations aren't that memorable. At least for me, they're not that memorable. But when you're having a context conversation about deepness, and maybe even dissecting the person that you're talking to, and they're dissecting you, and you can feel that energy in the room and the energy in the conversation, I think they're very memorable conversations. I have conversations like that with my best friend, and we're talking about each other, we're picking out what we say to each other, kind of not throwing it back, but kind of okay, so you said this a minute ago, what did you really mean by that? And we're both wow, why? We're just getting to know each other more and more each time, and we're loving it. And those are conversations we always go back to of being like, yo, remember what we were talking about? Like, that's great. We always talk about that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's definitely the context of the conversation as well with who you're talking to, you know?
Yeah.
Because I think you talk to a stranger, you can have those deep conversations with strangers, but I think it's more of it's good to know them at first, you know, getting past the small talk, breaking the ice of, you know, quote unquote new person, but then going into that conversation, the deepness of it, for sure.
Like, let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Exactly.
Good question, guys.
Yeah, very good question. Next one is, what is the power of acquaintances?
Yeah, acquaintances.
Yeah.
The power of acquaintances. An acquaintance is a weak tie. And most of the people we know in our lives are acquaintances. So Dunbar's number, named after, what was he, a psychologist, an economist, something? Mr. Dunbar. He essentially picked a number and said, here's how many people our brains can remember. I think that's true. I think we have a cycle. If you move from one place to another place, you're going to meet new people. Your brain doesn't have infinite space.
Right.
So you're going to have to get rid of something. And sometimes we get rid of people. And the power of a weak tie is that most opportunities come from weak ties, or they come from acquaintances. The people who are really close to us and really dear to us, if they have an opportunity for us, it'll come. But having a friend of a friend, or, oh yeah, I met you here and you used to go to this school, you don't know me that well, that's where a lot of opportunities come. And I just watched this thing about networking. And one of his biggest things was dormant ties, which is you knew someone at one job, then you move away, and 5 years later, if you can strike up a dormant tie and be like, hey, how you doing? I'm just checking back in. That's where a lot of opportunities come from, is dormant ties. So having a weak tie is super important. Acquaintances are super important. We don't really use that word that much anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, are you my friend? Are you not my friend? But think of the people that you see that you're friendly with, but you're not hanging out with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an acquaintance.
And real quick, to break it down, what is a weak tie versus like a dormant ties? You know?
Yeah. Good question. So I just threw around that phrase without explaining. So you have your strong ties and your weak ties. Your strong ties are the people who you're very closely connected with. So your family, your close friend circle, your coworkers that you see every day. Those are relationships that are more like sacred to you. You can't have that many, like Dunbar's number. We could fact check, but I forget how many he says you can have at one time. But we have limited space. And then you have your weak ties. And those are the people who you may have worked with, you play soccer with every now and then, but you don't talk to that much. You go to church with, but you never really hang out with. Those are your weak ties.
Okay. Yeah, I was making sure. Because like I had a feeling I knew what it was. Because I think I know like of a few weak ties right off the top of my head, right when you said it. But I also know like a really good strong ties that I have with my friends or my best friend. And that kind of leads into the next question of how long does it take to make a best friend?
Oh, over 200 hours, according to Dr. Jeff Hall. Yeah, which really cool research. They had to do a guesstimate of all of they were doing a study. They had a whole bunch of different people and they got all this data, and over 200 hours is best friend level, which is wild to think about. That's a long time.
That's
right?
a long time.
But when you ask people, a lot of people's best friends are friends that they had in high school or middle school. And the reason why is because we get so much time together in school without even thinking about it. You can cover 200 hours in a school year. You can cover 200 hours because you're at school 8 hours a day. Sometimes you go to sleepovers. Sometimes you go to parties. And before you know it, you hit 200 hours. What is it, like a close friends over 80 hours?
Wow.
His research has been shared by a lot of different people. But I want to quickly connect the two, acquaintances and best friends. Whenever we think about building relationships and building friendships, we think about building these really deep friends. And we want that because that's really meaningful and fulfilling. But we can't discount, like whenever people ask, what's the power of an acquaintance? We can't discount an acquaintance because there's so many opportunities and such cool things come from acquaintances. So don't feel disappointed if you are talking to a whole bunch of different people and you don't feel like you're making a best friend.
Mm-hmm.
Like you need to have best friends for sure, and you'll get them if you keep putting yourself out there and getting to know people and hanging out with people that you jive with. But if you're getting a lot of acquaintances, that's awesome. That's a W. That's a major win. So yeah, to answer that question, over 200 hours to make a best friend.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a follow-up with that. I'm guessing you have a best friend. Yep. How did you guys meet?
Okay. Most of my friends are all high school best friends.
Still today?
Still to this day.
Awesome.
I would say I have close friends in Lawrence that we've spent a lot of time with. Mm-hmm. But I thought this was rare to me. And the more I think and reflect on it, the less I think it is rare to me. I feel like I have a hard time making deep best friends, but an easy time making friends.
Ooh, yeah.
And I think the truth of the matter is it's not really something wrong with me. It's that everything's so busy now. Yeah. And we have so many different alternatives than going out and talking to people. So it's not like a character flaw for me or other people who relate with that statement. But yeah, most of my friends are from high school. Or best friends are like high school. I have a couple who are from college or grad school.
Yeah.
And then like some close friends in Lawrence, but I got to get some best friends that are proximal to me.
Yeah.
So for long term, you need to have best friends all around you in like your actual space. So if all of your best friends are far away, that's something to consider. Like how can you get best friends that are close in distance?
It's kind of like going outside of your comfort zone, you know, and learning to be more, I don't know, like just outgoing in general and being like, hey, I don't really know you a whole lot well, but I would like to get to know you, you know, and then starting that conversation up and then, you know, like you said, it's 200 hours. So keep that in mind. And no, you're not going to do this overnight. It's going to be a long process, but the reward afterwards, having a best friend or having a close friend that is within your block or whatever in your city is going to be way more beneficial for you than having a really like best friend that's a couple states away or something like that. But yeah, no, that's good.
Totally agree.
What I was going to add on to that was, do you prefer depth over distance? Just as, you know, as Chris?
Yes, I do. I think it's easy to say I prefer having the distance because I have to be less vulnerable and it's not as scary. But I had a moment this past week where I had opened up to somebody and it was really encouraging to them. And they said, I'm so grateful you did that because it gave me the space to reciprocate and share something that I've been struggling with. So it's scary to be depth, but it's so rewarding and fulfilling.
Yes, absolutely. Kind of with the whole conversation, having a conversation with people and stuff like that. How do you leave a conversation? And is an Irish exit a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah, is the Irish exit a good thing or bad thing?
Maybe describe what an Irish exit is, because I know what it is. Yeah, I've done it a few times, but.
And what would you say it is?
An Irish exit is leaving, probably in the sense, leaving a conversation without like any like indication, epilogue to your conversation or anything like that. Yeah. Just being like, and then dipping out or something like that. That's an Irish exit. That's an Irish exit in any context, really. You know, leaving a house party or work or whatever. Just peacing out.
A work event, you slide into the shadows like Batman. Where'd he go?
Yeah. Batman is such an Irish exit kind of guy in
that is his MO. I think how do you leave conversation is a really good question. There's people who study this. It's called leave taking. How do you take leave? different cultures have different leave taking practices. Different generations have different leave taking practices. One of my favorites, I've mentioned them once already, and I don't want to seem too biased. Just, I feel like I have to say this. He's a political figure. If I endorse something that he does, that doesn't mean I agree with every political stance. We could have completely different politics, he and I, and we do have different politics. I'm sure we agree on some things, but one thing Obama will do is whenever he's talking to people in conversation and he wants to end it, he says, well, listen, this has been really nice.
Yeah.
Like that. We'll be talking. He'll be like, well, listen, I really enjoyed this.
Yeah.
And it is that, well, listen, that phrase is a really helpful phrase. And if you can find a phrase that works well for you, I know my wife is pretty good at being really respectful, and she's a really good professional. Mm-hmm. So I think she can be better at using phrases like, well, I don't want to take you away from your work.
Yeah.
Or I don't want to take too much of your time away, like more diplomatic. But ever since I saw Obama say, well, listen, this has been nice. Mm-hmm. I use that as my leave taking strategy. Some people aren't the best at reading cues.
Yeah.
And it's a scale. Some people are too good at reading cues. They're studying people all of the time. And we have to, with the context, we have to learn how to leave and when to leave. But I always like, well, listen. That's my phrase that I use. So if I say, well, listen,
that means
no, I'm trying to slide.
Yeah.
And then an Irish exit, I think, can work. It definitely gets you out of there. I think in conversations when you're talking to people, it's not going to work as much because you're while they're talking to you.
And maybe I guess if there's maybe 4 or 5 people in a conversation, maybe an Irish exit isn't a bad thing because you're just slowly exiting out.
Yeah.
I also say my phrase is, well, anyway, I gotta go back, or anyway, I'll let you leave, or stuff like that. But that's my exit cue, if you will. And the number one question that people have been asking is, how's Sonny doing?
Oh my gosh. Everybody was asking that question. Hey, Sonny. He got put on a diet by his vet. We need to kind of trim some weight down. But he's fun. He's happy. He's excited for the new place we're about to move into. But yeah, Sonny's doing well. So thank you all for the questions. Thank you, Logan, for the rapid fires.
Sure.
I love being able to just answer questions and add value that way. We're going to be back at it again. We have another episode coming up this next week. It's going to be 3 out of 4 for the solo episode series. If you've enjoyed this, pass it on. We are changing things up a little bit with the solo. We're going to have guests on soon, but as we transition over to a new space, I wanted to make sure that I still got to explore some things, that Logan got to explore some things on the podcast, and together we're going to be able to build a great show. So I feel like I'm having some tongue twisters here. Other than that, I think we're about to sign off.
Yeah, I think that's a wrap.
I think it's a wrap. So thank you all. Like, comment, subscribe. Comment whether or not blue is the most popular favorite color. I'm sure you could Google search that. But before you do, let me know. Do you think blue is the most popular favorite color? If so, why? And what's yours? Ooh, a little community engagement. Yeah. Hey. All right, guys. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. And as always, we'll see you next time, folks.